Welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, the Football Grump. And welcome to 2026, way too early draft preview week. We're going over the offense today. Grump, you've been a part of this episode for years. We are not episode, these week of episodes. We do it every year, last week of June, before July. We do it of NBA draft week. So it's always fun to get a way too early look at next year's class. These players have very often ended up New York Giants. Malik Neighbors was one, Evan Neal was one, and there's been other guys as well. Andrew Thomas, this Kayvon Thibodeau was one. So we've been able to turn these guys into Giants more times than not. Specifically because the Giants have had a lot of high picks, and we go big game hunting with this. We're not looking for like third round fits for the Giants. So Grump, how are you?
Doing well, Bobby. This is one of my favorite episodes to do, and it seems a little silly because it's so far in advance, but it really does give me a head start on what I should be watching for on Saturdays. And it's always kind of good because we get like an amalgamation of players. So some players on this list that I was already looking at, and then there's other ones that I, had a little bit more on the back burner that I was forced to watch now, and I was happy I watched them because I'm excited to see what they do on Saturdays going forward. I'm doing great.
Yeah, it's the beginning stage of falling in love. That's what it is. Where it's like, oh, you've caught my eye. And then it's like you go through the process and like, oh, you look like you look like something realistic for me. And then you get married at the draft possibly. And I'll be honest, for this offensive one, I didn't find that guy until the last guy that I watched for this. So I'll save that. We're also doing quarterbacks. Decided that we'll just do two QBs every year, not necessarily the consensus 1 and 2, but the two like more interesting prospects. So we're going to talk about Lanoris Sellers, and Fernando Mendoza, who's going to Indiana. But we're going to start with 3 offensive tackles. Before that, Grump, this episode is brought to you by some special people. We got James. It's not my brother. That's just James. There's a lot of Jameses on the Patreon. This one is just James. Big Blue fan for life. He's a fan for life. And then Connor Smith, he seems like some the 28th pick in the NBA draft out of Duke. Connor Smith. Grump, who are these draft picks?
These wonderful draft picks went to patreon.com/Giants Nation, where they could sign up and get access to watch these episodes while we make them live and comment on them, and also get entered into a t-shirt raffle and get some free stickers from you, Bobby Skinner. And they were glad that they did.
Patreon.com/Giants Nation. You'll be glad you did. It's what makes the show go. It's what makes the show go. All right, so we put 3 offensive tackles into this episode. And honestly, if we were really just trying to find the next Giant, we would have kicked out the 2 quarterbacks and done like 5 offensive tackles. In fact, I did my first ever preseason mock draft that went out yesterday. And I took Spencer Lomu in the second round out of Utah. For that pick. He's not included in this one. So we have Kadyn Proctor, offensive tackle out of Alabama, Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle out of Miami, and then Isaiah World, the Nevada transfer to Oregon this year. Before we get into it, Grump, I want to see, what are your 1, 2, 3 rankings of these 3 guys?
Oh man, it's tough because Kadyn Proctor is definitely left tackle, and I think Francis Mauigoa is definitely a right tackle. But I'll go Proctor, then Mauigoa, and then World. But they're all great. I'm excited to talk about all of them. What about you?
I have the reverse order. I have Isaiah World, Francis Mauigoa, and then Kadyn Proctor. And I'm really excited to talk about Kadyn Proctor, and I'm trying to not judge him by Evan Neal or Alex Leatherwood and other tackles from Alabama, but I am learning from Evan Neal, right? Because I'm like, man, 95% of his reps were really good. What happened there? And I think it's not just the Alabama comparison. It is like both guys who are 6'6", 350 plus, or 6'7", 350 plus that we look at those guys. So, who do you want to start with first? I don't want to start negative because I am going to do to talk a little negative on Kadyn Proctor. Maybe we can start with our guy who we both have number 2, and that's Francis Mauigoa out of Miami.
Yeah, I'd love to. Do you want me to start?
No, I'll go. 6'6", 315 pounds. Gave up 1 sack, 1 QB hit, and 17 pressures last year. This will be his third year starting. He no redshirt year from he was a number 6 prospect in the Arch Manning class. Right now, here's my thing with Francis Mauigoa is I think I can by this time, or not by this time, but by January next year, I can really see Mauigoa improving my view of him. But right now, I view him as a good athletic offensive tackle who can grow into something. But right now, if he was to come out, yeah, I'd be like, I think this guy has a better career at guard, and he can be someone who can compete as possibly an all-pro guard. But again, he is going to be a true junior this year. Like I said, like he shows flashes of strength and athleticism. But I think the overall thing with Maligo that stops me from being like all in on him is I think the speed to power really gives him a lot of issues. The Duke game in there, and I think he's got like a soft shoulder, so like he'll open up his hips and give the corner too often. Um, and I just think there's some elementary technique stuff with him that he needs to get better at and add more core strength. But I do look at a player Grump where I'm like, this is a guy who's athletic. He does a lot of things I like. There's some things I really like in the run game. He mirrors well. Once he is connected, he handles the blocks extremely well. I just look at a guy who needs to work on his technique quite a bit, and I see translating really well to guard. But again, I want to see him develop, and then maybe I'm changing my opinion when it comes to draft season next year.
So, there's definitely improvement that can be had across all three of the tackles that we're going to talk about, at least from my perspective. Mauigoa, we'll start right away. I think he has ideal size for the position. He's got like the stockier build to him, that 6'6", 315. He's very much, he's got that natural sturdiness to him, a natural strength to him. I would almost say he's like bordering on, I don't want to use the term like overweight, but like functional weight could be changed there. Like I think there might be a diet change in there for him. Maybe I'm kind of a little bit talking out of my ass because I'm not like a nutritionist or anything like that. But when I compare body types, that's just something I kind of saw. But I think he's a very smart player. I think he's smart against twists and stunts. I think he's reliable to be in the right place at the right time in his pass sets. I think his stance is pretty good. It could be a little lower in his seat for some improved balance to clear up some issues he has there. But where I think he's really good at is when issues come up, he does seem to have a really good ability to recover. When things break down, he's able to fix that and kind of get things under control again. But I also think that things can be cleaned up so they don't get there to begin with. I think that sometimes he gives up some ground and to gather himself, but he never really seems to get totally run over. The worst thing I think he has is like slower than average foot speed. I don't think that they're bad, but it's just a little bit below average. And despite the initial step out of his stance being quick, he can hang with speed. But I think that when you get to NFL levels of bend and outside inside moves, I think he's going to have some trouble there. He's going to have to clean some of that up. He's going to have to rely on his foot speed a little bit more, be more confident in it, not open his hips too early. And I think the other thing that kind of it just drives me nuts is he doesn't really strike with authority with his hands sometimes. It's almost like he's inviting the hands to come to him and then he'll work off of it. When I kind of wish that, like, there are times where he's just like waiting and it's like, dude, just hit him. He's right in front of you. Just hit him. Knock him off balance. You don't have to wait for everything to come to you. But overall, I see a really solid right tackle that if he could improve some things, I think would be an excellent addition to any NFL line. I think he's definitely going to be starter material at the NFL level if he continues to improve on the trajectory that he's on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things he's got to get better at, but there's things that he can't get better at. But also, it's like, why aren't you like in the run game? He blocks with his elbows, right? Like that's kind of weird shit. Like he'll just close his feet and he'll raise his pad level, which again he'll find wins in the run game, right? He has the ability to be a mauler. And the fact that he like plays like that and can win as often as he does, I'm like, okay, let's continue working with this. Like you mentioned, once he does get connected with a guy, he controls the block really well. He mirrors with him. He's got strong hands once he's connected. But like you said, he just struggles to get to his landmarks and invites the bull rush way too often. And it just continuously knocks him back. Does he get totally bowled over in a shed? No. He will, recover to an extent, but a lot of times he's recovering in a quarterback's lap. And it's, it's affecting the quarterback's timing or even leading to a sack or a quarterback hit, or, a pressure.
Not for nothing, but the average ACC edge rusher is not NFL edge rusher. You know what I mean? So, like, just because you're not getting bowled over right now and you're just getting pushed into the quarterback's lap, I mean, that needs to be improved. Like, it's only going to get harder and harder as you continue to move up competition levels.
Yeah, but like again, you see him like be athletic, like in space as a mover, like whenever they pull him, like he does really well in those outside zones things that maybe didn't run a ton of. Like he can do things there, but they really need to there's some basic shit. Like I said, like the run game, his feet get skinny, his pads rise, and he blocks with his elbows. Like that can't be happening. I don't care if you're a true sophomore or not. Like you've got to clean that shit up, especially if you want to be a top half of the first round player, which right now Mauigoa is projected to be that by most people. Obviously, a lot of shit changes between now. And then I remember Zion Nelson was a Miami offensive tackle projected to go top 20, and he never even got drafted. And I think some of these early rankings will have a little bias to your high school recruiting ranking, which he was number 6 in that class. But just I think he's got to get better at things. But I will say, like, I don't know if he's actually 6'6". He looks like he's maybe 6'5".
Yeah.
He does have like a bit of a guard frame, and I look at him like this stuff will translate well to guard. He's got his true junior year for me. But right now, again, if he was to come out right now, I'd be like, okay, this is a second round guard. Where I think his goal I'm sure his goal is to be a first round tackle. And right now he's not that, but he has this year to do that for Miami. But I think Cam Ward, helped him escape from a few more sacks accredited to him this past year, where he only gave it 1 sack in his true freshman year, which credit to him, he was starting as a true freshman. He gave up 5 sacks. So do you have anything else on Francis Mauigoa?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you're right. I didn't really consider it at the time, but I do think with his build, he's probably not 6'6". He's probably is close to the marked 315. Yeah, he probably does have a guard build. My only thing is with the way he run blocks, which I have the same notes as you. That's definitely got to improve if he's moving to the inside. You can't just like throw your body at defenders, especially NFL defensive tackles, and think you're just going to get movement there.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that he does do that and get movement now is like, all right, let's build on this. All right, so let's save my crush for third. And let's talk Kadyn Proctor, offensive tackle at Alabama, because I think he's the guy that people are the most familiar with. In fact, he was number 5 ranked in that recruiting class. Kadyn Proctor, offensive tackle out of Alabama, 6'7", 360 pounds. As a true sophomore, gave up 3 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and 9 pressures. As a true freshman, gave up 12 sacks, 1 QB hit, and 12 pressures. With Proctor, I can put together a great reel of pass protection film. I can do it. He gets to his landmarks pretty consistently. He has great length, and his punch stops those college football pass rushers in their tracks. The issue with Proctor, and again, this is learning from past mistakes with guys like Evan Neal and these types of builds, is when the negative reps pop up, I just think about facing consistent NFL pass rushers and being like, is this something that's going to show up consistently? Right? You see I think he has below average foot speed. So you see reps of guys getting to the corner, and it's bad. Right now, again, like I said, 95% of the time, they don't get to the corner on him, right? He has good footwork, he gets to his landmarks, and he has length where they're not able to get to the corner. Similar to the same way Evan Neal was out of Alabama. But you also see guys get under his pads and work a little speed to power. And if they get him off his timing, whenever he's off his timing, I think he struggles, right? Even Trace Ford, the Giants UDFA out of Oklahoma, this undersized edge who we talked about maybe even switching the stack linebacker. I remember we joking, being like, beat reporters, tell us if he's working the stack linebacker. He didn't. He's at the edge. He got him off his timing, speed to power. And when you get under his pads and get underneath him, unlike Francis Mauigoa, It doesn't stop. You will continue to drive him back, and that's where I think that size works against him. But for again, the positive is there. Like he is massive. He controls blocks with his lengths. His footwork is good. But the issues are, I think his strength is based in his mass. His but balance is below average. His athleticism is good for his size, but it's not NFL offensive tackle good. And again, when you get him off his timing, I feel like there are issues. And in the NFL, you're not going to have your perfect timing with that foot speed that Kadyn Proctor has. So again, as we do this more draft stuff, I've learned focus on the negatives. People say, "Oh, focus on the positives and build on that." No, you need to nitpick guys' negatives because negatives stop you from being a consistent player in the NFL. I have legitimate worries if Kadyn Proctor is even a good tackle.
So I actually echo all of your concerns. I know I had him ranked first, but it's difficult to grade these guys. I think that he has some pretty fluid technique for the most part, and it keeps him grounded. But I think the size is the biggest problem for him. He's all of 6'7", and he doesn't really get low in his stance. So like you said, people get into his pads. He struggles. He has some pretty poor balance issues that always seem to prop up when I find him tall in his stance. When I find him tall in his stance and someone can just either swat his hand out of the way or just beat him into his chest, he is on roller skates.
Consistently.
It happens constantly. Now, that being said, I do think it's correctable. You know, it is up to him to correct it. So, as we go through these three guys, there's going to be issues about them. You know what I mean? And there's some things that are great about Kadyn Proctor that you can't teach. You can't teach being 6'7" and having the length that he has. He is pretty fluid in his technique for the most part. That's pretty well done. But I do think he needs to find a way to get lower. And he's at kind of a disadvantage being as tall as he is and being as big as he is, and the advantages to that is that he gets a lot of natural strength from that. Like you said, his strength comes from his mass. But yeah, I also think that, like you said, his foot speed isn't the fastest. When people start to get around the edge, you start to see a little bit of the rise up more and more in his stance too.
Yeah, he
So
can't recover when he's behind. He doesn't get behind often, but when he does, he doesn't recover well. And again,
like typically when you see people get around the edge, you see the footwork fall apart first. You start seeing open hips and then, the turn and chase kind of stuff. Like I didn't really notice that with him. You just see like all of it just start to break down. He starts to get a little bit taller in his stance. He starts to lose his balance. And then, then he's always playing one step behind, like you said.
yeah. So that's the thing is, and again, I could put together the best, like out of these guys, I can put together the best 2-minute clip for social media for Kadyn Proctor. Again, he gets to his landmarks. He has length. He stops guys in his rush. Right. He didn't get a ton of matchups with James Pierce out of Tennessee, the Falcons' first round pick, who they traded a first round up. Now, again, if you listen to our Edge draft preview, I think I was very anti James Pierce, and not just because of the personal issues. But like he stopped James Pierce in his tracks, right? Even with that speed that James Pierce, because he got to his landmarks and he got hands on him. The issue is when he's facing a Brian Burns or an Abdul Carter, or Micah Parsons, or who name the top 20 to 30 edge rushers in the NFL. I think those guys are going to look at him like, I got him. I'm going to win this game. And it's not just comparing, big Alabama offensive tackle to big Alabama offensive tackle with Evan Neal. But I do see like there's legitimate similarities there with the balance with, like I said, Evan Neal. I did this film breakdown. I did this matchup with Trayvon Walker, right? Another, first round pick, first overall pick. And I'm like, I like this guy, right? He's good, right? Yeah, he's on the ground a little too often. He doesn't have the fastest foot, but like he makes up for it with his length. And so with Proctor, I'm just not getting like tied up on the same like, well, he's got so much positive that I'm not gonna worry about that, right? Even if he improves where he doesn't have some of the bad games that he had last year, where if he has 1 sack, 1 QB hit, 8 pressures. allowed on the year. It's just I worry when I see a guy like Trace Ford, again, an undrafted, undersized edge, just get under your pads and put you on skates more than a couple times. I seriously worry about how you're going to translate when you're facing the guys who are well above those guys on the depth chart.
Yeah, it's I think some of it also is playing on Alabama. You're surrounded by other really, really good players, and that can cover up a lot of your deficiencies. Plays may still work even though you have a terrible rep. Um, but I will say is like an added thing, and this isn't, I mean, everything I stand by all the criticisms I have for him. It must be difficult to block for Jalen Milroe in general, or just quarterbacks like that. I think that plays tend to get really broken down, and then he's taking off and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And for a guy, especially that's big and not super fleet-footed, I feel like those are more difficult situations to block in. But everything that we're really talking about in terms of criticism is just straight up, pass protection.
Yeah, like I said, if it's just one-on-one reps, I could put together a great reel. Now my guy who I'm in full bloom love with out of this whole episode, the only guy who I'm in love with, and that is Isaiah World, offensive tackle out of Oregon, 6'8", 309 pounds, transfer from Nevada. And I didn't have all 22 film on him, so the 3 games I watched were SMU and Minnesota, and then I watched the Oregon spring game. And watching the Oregon spring game and then watching the SMU and Minnesota game, you can already see some of the improvements that Oregon is helping with him with. Because this guy is a long, athletic freak who has the aggressive gene. His foot speed is extremely quick. He is a great mover. Strength isn't great right now, but he plays extremely strong. He's extremely flexible. He has a sturdy base. He's got work to do, right? His pass sets are still a work in progress. Oftentimes he'll miss his landmarks. He'll overset. There'll be a snap or two where he's leaning in space with a pass rusher, leaving him vulnerable. But he has long arms with a strong punch. He absorbs power extremely well, right? We just talked about Kadyn Proctor with some of these taller guys. How do you absorb power? He does a great job of it. In the run game, dude, he explodes out of his stance into blocks. I love it. And he's not just a guy who's leaning, firing out of his stance. His feet stay moving into the blocks. He rolls his hips through them. He wipes out defenders with aggression. He has torquing power in the run game. There's times where he needs to sustain his single blocks a little better because they get a little over aggressive. But you can move him as a puller. He is a beast. You're going to work him in outside zone. Like he is an asset in the run game and in pass protection. Like, again, there's things he needs to work on, but he's already a really good college pass protector. I was reading some stuff about like Oregon. They're like, we might like this guy more than Josh Connolly, who obviously just went in the first round to the Commanders. Isaiah, like I did the preseason mock draft grump. It was between Peter Woods and Isaiah World for me, with the Giants having the 5th overall pick.
So me not watching the Oregon spring game explains a lot, I think, in terms of your tackle rankings versus mine. So because I watched the SMU game. Here, let me just read my notes first. So number 1, 6'8", 312 pounds. He started all 13 games at left tackle for Nevada in 2024. He's gigantic, and like in all shapes, regards of gigantic. He's super fast out of his stance. A little bit clunky in his kick step, but I think that his lateral kick step can be affected by slower than average foot speed. I think sometimes his hand usage is what I would consider chaotic. I don't really know a better adjective for it. Sometimes in his pass sets, his feet stop when his hands go, and they should be working together. And I think that sometimes he has balance issues from being in a bit of a high stance, but more often it's just kind of missing with hands and letting hands into his chest. One of the things I really, really like about him is he's aggressive as hell. Like he has really, really active hands, but they feel undisciplined to me. Like it feels like he's doing a ton and not much is coming of it. You know what I mean? Like you see you watch enough offensive linemen and you see the guys who kind of like they go into their thing like they're hitting a sled and then they're just kind of, whatever. And then you see other guys that are just they're there to box essentially. Like they're just beating the shit out of whoever's across them. They're just gonna throw hands and it works. They're knocking them all off balance, they're throwing off their pass rush timing, all that stuff. He's kind of in between. He's got the mentality right, but it feels like he's missing because it's not I don't think it's a strength thing. Like because when you see it connect, like he knocks the shit out of people. It's great. I think also Nevada was using him for a lot of like pulls and stuff like that. Like you had him pulling all the way from the left side all the way across to the right side and wham blocking people. I think that his punches are really fast and violent. I'll never say this to a man who's 6'8" and 312 pounds, but it almost feels like a lack of strength, how much hand movement there is and how often there are times where almost nothing comes of it. It really feels like all of the correct pieces of a jigsaw puzzle were dumped onto the table. They're all right there. The border is done. And now you just have to put the rest of the pieces together. They're all there. We figured it out. But right now it feels like it's just the road grader mentality with a ton of fundamental stuff that needs to get cleaned up. And he got tricked around in that SMU game a lot. There was multiple times you see him like the full turn hips and like sprint after the guy I'm supposed to be blocking. Like he got really turned around at times. But moving upward a program to Oregon, they've just had two very good tackles graduate and move on. I trust that these pieces can be put together in Oregon where they couldn't necessarily be done in Nevada, which also Nevada was so bad that like there was like sacks like 1.5 seconds into a snap. It wasn't even his fault. So there's a lot of throwaway tape too that I watched.
Yeah, it's just like you said. I don't watch him like, oh, this is the strongest guy ever, but I think he plays strong. And I think he plays violent, and he's got like the core strength where he absorbs power pretty well in his pass sets. But like I said, he'll miss his landmarks, he'll overset, leaving him vulnerable inside. And his punch it'll miss at times, and he doesn't rework his hands. Right, but those are the things like that you work with young offensive linemen with. Those are the things you get better at, right? Like, I go back to Andrew Thomas, be like, oh, his technique is a little sloppy and all this. I'm like, okay, but he fucking dominates the SEC. He's extremely athletic. He has these long ass arms. He plays with aggression. Like the fact that he has all this technical stuff to improve on makes me excited because those are the things that you do improve on, right? Like, we're just talking with Kadyn Proctor. There's things you could, like you said, get a little lower, but like how do you get that guy at that size to play lower and to not lose leverage to speed the power defensive ends? It's like it's not an easy answer. With Isaiah World, it's just I need to get into the mind of Isaiah World. Are you putting in the work? If you're putting in the work, I want you, right? And this is where we're doing way too early stuff. It looks like he's put in some of it. And again, the Oregon spring game, I don't know which defensive ends he was going up against, but I was like, this is really impressive. Like I kind of fell in love after not really falling in love with a ton of guys from, this offensive side of the early draft preview. The defensive side, there's definitely guys. So Isaiah World, it was between him and Peter Woods for me with that round 1 pick 5 way too early draft preview. So I'm a big Isaiah World fan. You know what I'm also a fan of, Grump? The Sussex County Miners, baby. Which, by the way, we are going to have a live show at the Sussex Miners County Stadium for a game, August 2nd. We'll have more details on that in the very near future. But guess what they have coming up? They have the Fill It Up Regulars Alter Ego Nights. You're like, what in the hell is that? Well, one, it's benefiting 2 local children with critical illnesses. But the Fill It Up Regulars is the Miners' newest alternate identity, since New Jersey is now the only state where you can't pump your own gas, which I didn't know Oregon got rid of that until I was going through this. The Miners are paying tribute to the 1949 band with retro jerseys inspired by old school gas station crews. I've seen them. They look pretty cool. Fans can bid on these custom jerseys to benefit the 2 local children with critical illnesses. One is actually Nick Boyle's kid. You remember the tight end from the Ravens, who's in New Jersey? So like you can again bid on the jerseys. You support the Boyle family in Sparta, New Jersey, who their 4-year-old is bravely battling T-cell lymphoblastic lymphoma, and then a 17-month-old Kadyn from Wantage, who was recently diagnosed with an extremely rare bone tumor in his jaw and faces extensive reconstruction surgery. So those dates and games are Friday, June 27th. So this upcoming Friday, get out there. Friday, July 18th versus the Washington Wild Things. And then Saturday, August 30th for the New York Boulders. Plus, that's a fireworks night. They also have the classic car shows at every alter ego night. I like to get some of the car shows here in Florida. So the Sussex County Miners, the first sponsor of Giants Nation. Like literally the number one sponsor, and they're the best. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff with them. But go out to the game this Friday. Like, if you're in the area, go to scminers.com, go get your tickets, go check out their alternate jerseys, maybe help out some families in need. And check out the Sussex County Miners. They're the best. Grump.
You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. You will be glad you did.
No, you're really honestly, that's a fantastic cause, and the alternate uniforms thing is awesome. That's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, they have them. You can go see them now. They're pretty cool. So all right, let's get back into these. And again, we're gonna be doing stuff with the Miners throughout the summer, and I'm really excited. Again, you guys have found out I'm addicted to live shows now, so we're gonna be doing one there August 2nd. We're working on one on the south of the border. And then you never know what the next ones will be. So again, the Giants, we're not expecting them to be in the QB market next year. But again, I want to talk quarterbacks on this episode every year. So decided to pick Lanoris Sellers, the quarterback out of South Carolina, and then Fernando Mendoza, the Cal QB who's transferring to Indiana. Who do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about the crazy talent in Sellers?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. I think he's really. Both of these guys are really interesting.
Yeah, like the Sellers is like a very obvious. This is why he's interesting. The Mendoza one is like it's kind of hard to figure out this guy because there's so much to like, but there's also like one part of his game that's severely lacking, which you want to expect when you describe the rest of his game. With Sellers, 6'3", 240, he is an athlete, right? Had 850 rushing yards last year for South Carolina. Only 210 passing yards per game, 18 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He takes plays that you're like, all right, it's over, and he turns them into something, right? Like I mentioned Peter Woods in the mock draft. He escaped a Peter Woods sack for a 38-yard run. Felt like he made something out of nothing consistently in that Clemson game as a runner, right? There was, plenty of other opportunities, Texas A&M, Alabama, where he was able to do that. But he also had some pretty bad stuff in the passing game, right? He had a bad interception on a smash concept, a dropped interception on some late throws, a strip sack on a flood concept, where he's just stepping into the pressure that's there. I think he lacks the passing aggression that I want out of these athletes who you need a lot to grow. And again, his arm talent is overall good. It's not like this great Anthony Richardson arm talent that, was maybe a similar profile coming out of Florida a couple years ago. And work ethic's a big thing when we're talking about these guys too, where it's come to know that Anthony Richardson really doesn't have that work ethic. But I think he's fairly accurate. Just doesn't have that great precision. He hits his deep passes. He's that electric runner. The issue with Sellers for me is that he is just he's just laid on everything. Like he's just, even the stuff that's like, all right, this is open, this passing concept's open, he's laid on it. And when he's left with these not these big crazy decisions where it's like, all right, read this one player, make the aggressive throw. He just doesn't have that. And they kind of have to force him to do it, right? And I think it shows up the most in his play action splits. Where under play action, he's 70% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Without play action, he's 62%, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And I think South Carolina, there's times where the answer is not there, but I think they kind of just built it into that, where it's like, let's give him 1 read, 2 reads, and then run, because he's not comfortable where we need to give him this check down outlet or this quick game and stuff. It's always a beat late on open concepts reads versus zone coverage. And I just want to see him have more aggression in the passing concepts that South Carolina put on the menu for him.
Lanoris Sellers is a lot of fun to watch. I think if you're a fan of South Carolina and you're just going to be watching games, it's going to be exciting all year. I really, really mean that, because in the pocket, he really can make things happen. Like you said, athlete, and you kind of mentioned Anthony Richardson. I sort of see that as a runner in space. He reminds me more of like a Tebow than he does a Lamar Jackson. He's definitely a physical runner. He's perfectly comfortable running between the tackles. The way he escapes sacks too is not like, getting slender and slipping through. He's just going to bully his way out of it. He's going to strength his way through it. A little bit like Jalen Hurts would too. And he has good speed too. Now you will see that there isn't home run speed. When he takes off, people can catch up to him. But he does have a pretty big arm. He does keep his eyes downfield during all the madness that's going on in the back. Sometimes I wish that some throws had a little bit less touch and more zip. You mentioned being late on things, and I definitely think that that's true. But I also think that some things appear later because they should have been thrown with more zip, and they're just kind of floating a little bit longer than they should. I definitely think that that's a thing. I also do think that he's just late sometimes. However, I'll give him some benefit of the doubt here, because what we're watching is a guy who redshirted in 2023. And then in 2024, you see a pretty stark difference between the first couple games he plays and then the last few games that he plays. If very, very few attempts in some of the games that he played early on. I think there were a couple games where he threw like less than 15 times. There were others that he threw for 20, and then all of a sudden you see him starting to throw 30 times per game, throwing for more than 250 yards per game. So I'm wondering how much it really just took getting his feet wet. He is playing in the SEC. The front half of that schedule included teams like Alabama. So he did not, and LSU, I believe, was very early in the season for South Carolina as well. And on top of that, this may mean nothing, but from the information I have, it means a little bit to me. He did turn down NIL money to stay at South Carolina. I remember, this is a South Carolina native. So this wasn't like some 5-star recruit, whatever. This is a guy who wanted to stay home, and he turned down money to do it. So that tells me something about the environment itself is working for him. Maybe it's the coaching staff or whatever it is. I'm excited to see if he's able to continue making that leap into the next year. I'm not entirely sure that Sellers, unless he has a great year, there's no impetus for him to need to come out of school following this season. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's hard to project, because we would have said the same thing about Jalen Milroe. Like, again, even after the season, and then Jalen Milroe declared, he goes in the third round. And I think Sellers is someone who would go probably in a very similar range if he was to go out like if he was in this last year's class. I think he goes somewhere in that range. And like you said, he did get better as the season went along. Those first 6 games, he had 5 passing touchdowns and 4 interceptions. The last 6, he had 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now, there was 8 touchdowns in the Missouri and Wofford game alone. But nonetheless, he did have that, right? And one of those interceptions was a Hail Mary, I think, as well too, if I'm correct. No, the one that interception, that was the end of the Alabama game. So again, he has all this athleticism. He makes shit out of nothing. It's just, we need you to trust the offense a little more, which is something that he can do. But they also just didn't give him a lot of quick game NFL passing concepts or their outlets and stuff, because it's just I feel like they knew he's not gonna find these things on time. So let's just put less on his plate. Let's give him a very simplified offense and let him go be an athlete when that simplified offense isn't there. So I feel like you kind of got to lead in the water a lot of the times and stuff. And again, it wasn't. I'm not talking about he just isn't making these tough reads post snap process. I'm talking about read this one player, put this player in conflict, read him, make the decision. And he just was late, even on some of the completions, like you said. And I agree with you with the lack of zip. That's my third note in my write-up is ball can lack zip on intermediate throws, which he's got a big arm. I want to see more of that. but he just gets stuck on those front side progressions, and he's just always a beat late. But he is extremely talented. So right now he's going to get like that. He's going to jump up, and we'll see what he does. Though that's that's what you need to see out of Sellers. But he like you said, he is fun to watch, and hopefully they can be like a team that gets in the playoffs. Anything else on Sellers before we get to Mendoza?
No, I don't think so. I think that he's just fun to watch. So I'm going to have fun hoping that he improves.
Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana, again transferred out of California, 6'5", 225 pounds. He averaged 275 passing yards per game, 16 touchdowns, and then 6 interceptions last year. I watched his Wake Forest, Syracuse, and FSU game. He runs NFL concepts on a consistent basis. He processes post-snap extremely well. He has no fear, right? We talk about being a tick late with Lanoris Sellers. That is never an issue with Mendoza. He has no fear throwing with anticipation past linebackers' heads. He throws with, great timing on timing routes. And there's some tough throws that he makes in there, right? He's got like a little bit of Matthew Stafford to his game, right? He gets the backside progressions. He processes post-snap. Now, within that aggression, there's interceptions in there, right? Wake Forest, a safety drops down, he throws an interception. There was versus Syracuse. I don't know if you watched the Syracuse game, but like he's just trusting this linebacker who's widening to just not flip his hips and run with the in route. He does, but he throws that with anticipation. The linebacker stays with it, picks it off. Versus FSU, he threw a curl route, 4 yards before the receiver broke. Well, guess what? The corner just turns his head and is underneath it, and he gets the interception on that play. So, but like the way I'm talking about this guy, he has a fastball, right? He throws 100 plus consistently. He's got the big arm. He's aggressive. He processes post snap. He doesn't throw the ball deep. It's the weird, like the way I would just describe this guy, like big arm, fastball, pocket QB, processes post snap, not afraid to make any throw over the middle, throws with anticipation. There were so many, and Cal didn't put it on the menu a ton, right? So I'm not talking about a bunch of times where he turned it down, but there was a good amount of times where a safety is flat-footed. There's a post over the top, and he just won't pull the trigger on it. It's a very weird thing, but again, he has understanding of spacing. He trusts the concepts. Again, with that, there's going to be pass breakups and interceptions because he's maybe trusting things a little too much. He is a lot of people's like way too early darling in this draft process, and there's a lot I like about him, but it does weird me out. Like, why doesn't this guy throw the ball deep?
I wonder if you're going to laugh at this player comp, but he reminds me of Daniel Jones in like a lot of ways. I mean, for starters, he's tall. He's 6'5", 225. And he's a legitimate runner. There's one thing that we haven't talked about yet. A legitimate breakaway speed, where I was saying like Lanoris Sellers is just more of the physical guy where he'll escape tackles by just running through them, and then just kind of eventually someone will catch up to him. Like Fernando Mendoza will just take off and people will give up. He's actually really fast. And it's not like there was a ton of designed runs involved. Like there was a little bit of like just scramble to him, but that doesn't mean that he gives up on plays. Like you said, it's really impressive the way he's able to see the field. Now it's not super fast, the post snap processing. He does work through his progressions, but you can tell he's still locked on to where he wants to go first. And like, then eventually he'll go off. And the other thing I noticed is that the footwork gets really panicky when panicky is probably the wrong word, but it starts to break down as the play goes on and on and on. You can tell it's supposed to be maybe this read. Okay, it's not there. Maybe this read. Now all of a sudden feet are getting really narrow and we're taking a lot of steps and we're a little bit out of rhythm. And there's always that moment too, right before he decides that he's going to protect the ball and scramble. It's like those scenes in like Scooby-Doo cartoons where like they're like running in place for like a really long time before they actually take off. Like he kind of does that thing a little bit. The throws though are a lot more impressive to me than Lanoris Sellers. Like you said, throws fastballs. He throws everything on a frozen rope. to the point where I think that it's actually detrimental. You've some guys that are not that far away from you, and you're just like whipping fastballs at them.
Yeah,
You
hurt
can
his
see 'em.
accuracy sometimes.
Yeah, and with that though, we're talking about a guy who had near 70% accuracy anyway. And it's not the same as like Lanoris Sellers had like a 66-ish%, where a lot of his stuff was plays broke down. He kind of escaped the pocket and guys ended up being like completely wide open. Fernando Mendoza didn't really feel like that. A lot of really in rhythm, in time stuff, sometimes second read, sometimes third read. Really impressive. But there really is, like you said, a severe lack of tape of the downfield throws. One or two here and there. And I was even wondering, like, does this guy ever even throw a touch pass? So there was a couple passes where I saw they were like kind of touch passes and like the intermediate range out route sort of thing. That was kind of all I could see.
Well, he doesn't throw the ball deep to like really see it. Now, again, like, and the deep passes that he does have are very simplistic, like RPO verticals, right? Like, Jackson Dart will, like in the film breakdowns I do at Jackson Dart, you'll see they'll run RPO. If the wide receiver has a one-on-one with the press, they'll throw the vertical. Those are the ones he's throwing. But like, so pre-draft, I looked up first round draft picks on their 20+ yard air throws and then 10 to 20 range since 2021, and I included Jackson Dart, Shador Sanders, and Cam Ward in that. So Shador didn't go in the first round. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So out of 12 first round picks since 2021, quarterbacks, 20+ yard throw, only Bo Nix would have a lower rate than him. Which is, again, is weird because they were on the menu and he does, I think, process post snap well. I think I disagree with you where I think he gets the backside of stuff very quickly. I think only Cam Ward in this past class is someone who did it. Now it's a weak draft class, but like was the only guy who did it better than him. In fact, there's like a little bit like Drake May to his game with the trust and anticipation on some of the throws that he makes. So, and I'll say that I think he's an adequate runner in open space. I don't think there's anything elusive about him, but you can put him in a straight line and he's got some good striding along speed.
I will say this. Him transferring to Indiana, I think, is going to be a good thing. Jim Signetti, as the head coach there, just moved on from James Madison University, where he brought that program all the way up a whole level of competition to the Sun Belt Conference. He's transferred to Indiana. He took a bunch of his best recruited players from James Madison over there. I know Cal has had some star-studded players like Marshawn Lynch and Aaron Rodgers go there, but for the most part, they have a pretty terrible roster every single year. I wonder what this will do for him, but I definitely, Indiana being sort of on the low end of the Big Ten, although they were ranked last year to end the season, I'm pretty sure
they made the playoff, and I want to see them do it again.
Oh, that's right, they did make the playoff. Yeah,
their schedule's not overly tough. I want to see them do it again. Like if Mendoza's that guy, like you said with Signetti, I think Signetti's a great coach.
Yeah,
do it right. You saw Curtis Rourke play really well for them, who I think was like ended up being a 7th round pick for the 49ers. Like, do it. Make the playoffs. And I want to see Mendoza in the playoffs. Be interesting to see if they, help him push the ball a little more down the field. But there's a lot I like about Mendoza. It's just some questions on it. And like you said, like, can you throw a ball with touch? Because he does throw fastballs. Like, even the deep passing is a lot of times his back shoulders, which it's like, all right, just he puts it on a rope on that back shoulder. He's not really throwing anything with touch in stride over that outside shoulder to receivers. And again, Cal didn't put it on the menu a ton, but he did pass up opportunities where you see guys who like fit the profile of Mendoza, where it's like they like to throw that post over the top if the safety's flat-footed. And he just wouldn't do it, So, but again, I'm excited to see what Mendoza looks like in a new offense, in the Big Ten. And against better competition than what he was facing in the ACC, to be quite honest. All right, let's get into the wide receivers. Usually these way too early draft reviews are wide receiver heavy. It doesn't seem like that's the type of year. But we're going to look at Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State, 6'2", 195, had 1,100 yards last year for the Sun Devils and 10 touchdowns. In fact, his brother Jalen was the 20th pick by the Cavs in last year's NBA draft. How about that? I really like Tyson. He's not this. I don't think he's like this top 10 wide receiver. I think he's not a top end wide receiver one in the NFL. I think he's like a low end wide receiver one, and then one of the better wide receiver twos if you get him with the right duo. He's got some big slot tendencies, but he's just a winner. Like, he knows how to win. He knows how to separate. Um, his speed is good, but it's not burning, blazing speed. But he has great releases. He keeps his shoulders clean. He has a strong chest paired with great balance, and just every route is run well with timing, setup at the stem, the release. He knows how to influence defensive backs. I think he's a low end first round pick in every class to me.
I'm bad at player comps. But when I was watching him and I started writing down all the things that he did badly, okay, and like really well or whatever, I came away kind of feeling like Golden Tate-ish. And the reason I say that is because overall, all of his like general things are good. They're all good. They're just nothing was like elite. Like the overall speed and quickness, it's good. It's good for the position. I can't complain about it. He's good. He's quick in and out of his breaks. I wouldn't call him super explosive for the wide receiver position for the NFL. I think that he's quick and agile at the release point without taking forever into getting to the route. I think that the deep speed is a threat, but I would not call him a home run threat that requires like the archetype man corner or like overall like tons of zone assets being dedicated to his side of the field. I think that his route running is sharp and it's crisp, but and there's not a lot of wasted movement. He's good in and out of breaks. There's no rounded corners. He's precise, but like, again, it's just not explosive. Here's where he's elite. And it's the same thing I thought about Golden Tate. He's excellent at the catch point. He has really good hands. He works his way back to the football, which surprisingly is the thing that I constantly see college receivers not do. He works really late hands, which is an advanced thing that I oftentimes don't see college players do. He's very good at catching in stride with no wasted movement. Very rarely does he jump for no reason at the catch point. I think that he's really good at adjusting to the ball. There's many clips of him having to work his way backwards, sliding into a catch to make it work. I think he's good at high pointing. I think that he has some pretty good body control. I mean, although on college rules, some really outstanding catches, but they're 1 foot in bounds. It would never happen in the NFL. But you can tell that at the catch point, he's physical. He wants it. He's going to win. Like, you think about that I think you just posted recently, the Victor Cruz, all of his touchdowns from the 2011 season. The one that always stands out to me is the one that was just a prayer ball into double coverage against the Seahawks, where all three guys go up to make the catch, including Richard Sherman, and the ball just bounces around, just lands in Victor Cruz's right arm. He just tucks it in. That's exactly the kind of play that would happen to Jordyn Tyson. You could just tell by looking at it. I think that I completely agree with you. He's like, your low end. If he's the number one receiver on your team, then you probably have a bad roster. But if he's the number two receiver on your team, you probably have a very good roster.
Well, actually, I think he's like the perfect, like, hey, we have a franchise quarterback like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or whatever. This is the guy we're going to trade up in the first round to get him, because he may not be Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas, but he's what we need for a wide receiver with this quarterback, and to have him on the contract for the next 5 years. Like, that's what I view Jordyn Tyson. Like, in fact, you know what? That's for me my Jordyn Tyson prediction. Some team with an elite quarterback is going to trade up to like 23 or 22 for him. And maybe if it's not a great wide receiver class, he goes like, in that 10 to 15 range. We've certainly seen it, with guys like Jahan Dotson get bumped up. As receivers seem to get bumped up every year. And again, we didn't watch the other top rated receivers on the outside, but like you mentioned the Tate stuff, like I agree with the comp, but again, he's listed at 6'2". Now he may be 6'1", but or 6 foot. But like he's not 5'10" like Golden Tate. It's just every route, like I said, is run so well with timing, setup, stem, release, and it's quick. It's just quick, efficient. He has good speed, like you said, not blazing, burning speed, but looking to the Justin Jefferson clip from a camp last week. He's like, you don't have to be fast. How many super fast wide receivers are Hall of Famers? It's all about the setup. It's all about the setup. And getting into the route. And that's what Jordyn Tyson understands. So I think he's, like I said, I think he's a low-end first-round receiver in every class. If he was in the Malik Neighbors class, he would have been wide receiver 5 for me. If he was in the Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison class, he would have been wide receiver wide receiver 1 for me. So it just kind of depends on what his class looks like of where he might end up going. So I want to not skip, but we'll do the other wide receiver last because I want to talk about tight end. Max Klare, Ohio State tight end. He's transferring from Purdue, 6'4", 236. He was the most receiving yards for returning power for tight end. In fact, the first play I saw of him was against Penn State with this great move block, and then he was jawing with Abdul Carter, and I really liked that. He had 685 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is a really good athlete at the tight end spot. I think he lacks strength, but he's a very good mover. Want to see him get better with his route running. I think it can be elementary and lacks nuance. And there's I guess effective releases, but sometimes he pushes too much inside. But he's got quick acceleration. He tempos his routes well. Even though he's got 5 drops, he hands catches. He's good with the ball, in his hands. He improvises well. My thing with Klare is I worry though that I like him in the same way I like Dalton Kincaid, and then Kincaid just hasn't fully figured it out at the NFL level.
I think that Max Klare is probably going to be a unheralded lack of flash tight end at best. I don't think that he's ever going to go to the NFL and light it up. Now this is the big test, right? Because he's transferring up from Purdue to Ohio State, where I'm sure he'll be featured a lot more. He'll be surrounded by a lot more talent. You could again, like I was saying with some of the Nevada tape, some of the Purdue tape, it's really hard to see anything about anybody because the play's over so quickly. But I completely understand where Ohio State's coming from taking him away. He lines up everywhere for starters, lined up everywhere for Purdue. I think that in space, he's a good mover. Average speed and agility, you know what I mean? But he's fluid. The routes aren't crisp and really well defined, but there's not a lot of wasted movement. And I think that in the receiving game, the thing that just comes natural to him is the hands catching. He's a natural pass catcher. Everything is very smooth. The whole operation's very smooth, but just as a mover, he's only decent, at 6'4", 240 pounds. He's got the right size for a tight end and all that, but he's not super duper athletic. He looks more like Jason Witten than he does Travis Kelce. That you know what I mean? He's just not twitchy or sudden. He runs the route correctly and he's in the right spot. Where I think that he shines the best is probably as a move blocker. I think that that's where he looks most polished. He's always staying in front of guys. He's always able to get into good position, stay in the way. He's never really a road grader. I wouldn't really say that he's one of the strongest tight ends I've ever seen.
No,
but he is an effective blocker, especially in pass sets. And he was used a lot in pass protection. And I think that he's always effective in those areas, gets in the right position, gets the job done, and that's that. But in the run game, he does not really generate much push at all.
Yeah, I mean, my last 2 notes of him are lacks inline blocking success and experience, and I think being 236, 240 has a big part of that. But good move blocker, consistently gets to a spot, which is half the battle is when you're using that fullback or wham blocking role. Again, I give him a little more credit as an athlete than you. Like you said, I don't think he's this guy who's just this pure burner. And maybe it's all for naught because he's only 236, 240 pounds, and he adds weight, and maybe that slows him down quite a bit. But I think he's got quick acceleration off the line as a tight end, and good transitions. Maybe he doesn't have that great straight line speed, but I think there's a reason why Purdue didn't line him up in line a ton, and would line him up in the slot or outside. And again, ended up being their leading receiver on a pretty bad offense. It was tough to watch at times, and I've watched it a lot because of Marcus Bowe. And now Max Klare. So we'll see how he looks at Ohio State. Ohio State is the king of the tight end who goes in the mid round. Everyone loves, and they're yeah, they're not actually any good at anything. Shout out Jeremy Ruckert. Shout out what's another guy who fits in that category?
I mean I was gonna say not Jake Ferguson.
Well, he was Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
Jeremy Ruckert pissed me off so much because everyone's just yep, tight end 1. I was like, what does he do well? What tell me what's his thing? All right, let's go quick because I don't want to go too long. Aaron Anderson, wide receiver at LSU, 5'8", 188 pounds. This is a slot wide receiver. He's a slot only, even though he has the ability for big plays and he creates big plays with the yak or even down the field. I think he sets up receivers well with his track. He can actually go up and get it. He has good yak ability. LSU, though, never really used him as like a traditional slot wide receiver. So it'll be interesting to see how his route running improves. 5'8", 188. He's not thin, but he is short. And I know people probably don't have the biggest appetite for another 5'8" slot receiver, but I think Aaron Anderson's got juice to create big plays in the NFL.
I mean, we didn't pull this guy out of our ass. I gave you some guys that I thought were like possible slot replacements for Wan'Dale Robinson. You said pick the highest rated. This is the highest rated, and not for it's for good reason. I think that he has the top end speed and quickness. He is explosive and sudden in and out of his breaks. Like, I mean, foot in the ground, change direction. That's it. There's no other foot. There's no other footwork that happens there. It's really just that he does have the home run speed. Like you said, LSU would just send him deep a lot. He had some long developing routes that would have him way downfield. I think that he's really good at the catch point, but for me, it's just the combination that he is an excellent route runner in terms of his explosion in and out of his breaks and just no rounded corners at all, just breaks it off and loses defenders. And the speed and quickness in which he's able to do it. I think that that's where he really separates himself at the catch point. I think he's pretty good. But there are definitely some times where you watch the ball just bounce off of his hands, and I'm hoping that improves going forward. He is working with Garrett Nussmeier again next year. We'll see if that continues to improve for them.
Hey, leading receiver for LSU after losing Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. So we'll see what he's able to do.
But I mean, they spread the ball around. He only had like 885 yards or something.
Yeah, 884 actually.
Only.
Yeah. So like I said, it'll be interesting to see how he develops. All right, that's an episode. Not going to waste too much time. We'll be back on Friday for your defensive preview. Check out the mock draft that's already out. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.